Hello, welcome back to Access. I'm Nathan. I'm here with Holly.
Hi.
We're at Gamescom. This is our first video that we've recorded at Gamescom.
In our little oasis.
And things are falling apart already over there. Yes, but we're here to talk about, we saw Dark Souls 3 earlier on today. It was like
you didn't just see it, Nathan. You played it.
Yeah, I did play it quite badly. There was
so bad.
It was like an extended version of the demonstration that Dave and I saw at E3.
Yep.
And then I got to play it, and we got to. Hopefully, there should be some footage over this. That's just kind of off screen. So, like.
It is, yeah. It's actually off-screen footage. So it was Nathan playing. So if it's really bad, then you can.
And also, there's going to be a bit of glare on there. But we thought we'd show you rather than not show you at all. I didn't do great. But you want to? So I mean, let's talk. Let's kind of run through the presentation, everything they showed us, and then I'll kind of point out the stuff that was new and what I thought about that.
So this is my notepad. I made about 5 pages of notes.
One of these deals
that I'm now going to run through. So obviously Miyazaki is lead game designer again on Dark Souls 3, which is always great news for the fans. But he said there are 3 main factors that he has when he is designing this game. Are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
1, a sense of world scale and immersion.
Okay.
2, apocalyptic world and heroic lore.
Yep.
3, evolution and developing of a series concept.
I agree with all of those things.
Tick, tick, tick.
Miyazaki-san.
So basically, number 1 was a bigger world, dynamic lighting, the way the wind blows, and there's like ash coming onto your clothes. That's what one.
One of the first things that you see in the world, and you should hopefully be able to see it on screen now, is like the corpse of kind of an ashen dinosaur, and there's
dragon.
My God, dinosaur! Am I 5 years old? Yeah, dragon.
Jurassic Nathan. It's a damn dragon, Nathan.
It's the first day of the show and I'm already ruined. And it's kind of got, it's not an epic dinosaur, it's like a stegosaurus with all this ash coming off it. No, it's a dragon and it looks beautiful. And then there's a real dragon that burns you up, of course, because that is.
Oh, we'll get to the dragon.
The tradition of the Dark Souls games. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to pointedly interrupt with some detail there.
Number 2 means withered beauty. So the whole thing, like, I can't get over to you. It is such a beautiful, beautiful world, and it is falling apart in a way that the boss kind of summed it up, which I guess we'll get to, but it's just...
I didn't.
Well, you didn't, no.
I didn't get to the boss.
I was desperately, because I'm going to talk about this boss in a bit, and I was like, beautiful, we'll have some direct footage of Nathan. No, we won't. Nathan died.
I couldn't find the way. To be fair, in the demonstration, they do cheat when they show us how to
they
get
did
there.
take a shortcut they'd built into their demo, but not into
there.
ours. And number 3 means evolving basic series concept. So the idea of expanding on role play and a range of character builds.
And also, when I first saw that presentation, and it's what I think now as well, when it says building on series concept, it's not just the concept of how the world works and how the characters work.
It's tough. Like, it's not just what they mean.
It's like to do with the kind of the philosophy of what it means to be in these worlds where you don't know, where these worlds are withering and dying and you don't know why. Yeah. And you're this figure who kind of stands alone and you're not sure why you're there. And it's kind of, that whole abstract weirdness, humanity aspect to it. It's definitely like it means that too.
Yeah. So I thought, because it sort of said the expansion of role-playing range of characters, I thought that was a lovely segue into talking about the 2 characters.
Yep.
So you played as Dark Knight and, she says, checking her notes, Northern Warrior.
Northern Warrior. So at E3, the only thing that we got to see in the focus was very much on sword play. So it was only the knight character that was available. And they talk about this time, they talked more expansively about the new elements of the combat. So we knew that if you press L2 now, instead of going for a riposte, you kind of enter a different stance.
Yeah, that was really cool.
So that's what the swordsman does. So we kind of, at E3, we're like, I guess everyone
goes into... It's called the ready stance.
Yeah, and everyone goes it, but they call them combat arts. And they're not all like that. So what we saw was the big difference in the Northern Warrior was he yelled at people like Skyrim-esque.
It was very, very Skyrim. Because the Northern Warrior is just like it's leathers and furs and
like nose guard and an axe, right? And,
yeah.
And he kind of and that knocks people off balance so you can get your attacks in. So I guess for people who have played all the Souls games and again have played Bloodborne. There seems to be less defensive strategy and more offensive strategy. I think that's fair to say. And we kind of saw more of the depth of that. And they're not just all going to be different stances. It seems like all the different classes are going to have different ways in which they are using these different combat arts, as they are called. So that was one of the big kind of step-ons from from E3 that we saw.
Now we saw some other weapons as well. Short bow with movement.
Yeah.
Very Legolas.
Yeah, I'm not sure we
Not for
spoke about
longbow,
that at
though,
E3. Yeah, so it was
Not longbow.
you're used to having when you have like a curved proper bow in the Soul series, you're rooted to the spot and you're aiming. Or if you've got a crossbow, even I think you have to stand still. But this is much more like a crossbow is in the other games. He kind of holds a crossbow down in front of him, and he can kind of roll, run around, get a bit of room, and then shoot off a couple of quick arrows.
Which is very cool. And scimitars.
Yeah, the whirling dervish.
Yeah, picking up the 2 blades, dual wielding, and then he sort of lured like 5 or 6 of these kind of like undead into a corridor, and then just at the entrance just span and just literally took them all down in one go.
And again, it's like that Souls thing of when you're stuck in a small area and you can normally kind of pick up 2 or 3 mob characters like with your swinging attacks, and you kind of, if you're very good, you can keep them all staggered at the same time. If you're in a corridor, you might hit the edges, and this kind of dual wielding scimitar attack seemed much more confined for them to kind of.
It's really beautiful movement, actually. I have to admit it's
much more elegant than just swinging around with the axe.
It did look elegant, mind you, as a professional playing it.
Yeah.
You didn't try with scimitars.
No.
I'll put that out there.
No,
in fact, you picked up the greatsword and you're just like, what? Let's not bother. Let's just keep going.
Concentrate on firebombs.
Okay, so moving from the weapons, we saw lots of enemies. I know you've seen most of these before, but quite interestingly, knights featured quite heavily in this section, and apparently Miyazaki really loves his knights and wants to bring them back in a big way. I think you'll be pleased to know knights are dicks and they're back.
The idea that they might have been devalued at some point. So I think it's Demon Souls players might know knights. You'd see them like, especially in the narrow kind of castle balustrades kind of things, and you'd be like, oh, this guy's just I'm in trouble now. They're really like, every time you saw them it was horrible, and he basically wants you to have that feeling again. And there was a combat example where they were fighting 2 knights at the same time, and just how difficult that would be, and how you should take advantage of the fact that knights with different weapons move at different speeds, so kind of try and separate them out.
Yeah, so in this case the lancer actually moved quite slow, so he had lance and shield, and he was much slower than sword and shield, and the idea was you could very quickly pull the sword and shield knight away, do some damage, and pull him back again before the lancer caught up, and that way you could take 2 knights on at once but defeat them one at a time, which really was key to surviving.
Yeah.
You mentioned the dragon. Dragon at the very first castle, which apparently this idea of putting dragons in first castles is one of Miyazaki's favourite things to do. Which is kind of like a series familiar.
Yeah, I got my bottom burnt by that dragon.
It was quite cool. So the idea was there was a lower path and an upper path, and you went down a lower path, and you saw at the end of it there was like 6 or 7 baddies, and you're just not going to get through that alive. So you come back on yourself and you go up the top path, and then all of a sudden this dragon just looks at you and you're like, uh-oh.
Especially because you've seen the dead one. You're kind of like, the dragons are obviously dormant here.
Yeah.
Just flipping lands on the wall.
This dragon then absolutely toasts the top level, so you have to run back. But because you've then woken the dragon, he then comes down on the lower path and then toasts the lower path, does clear it up for you, and then you have to time it then, and you have to sprint.
Very much kind of like a shorter version of the opening kind of long, really early on in Demon Souls, where you had to run the first kind of dragon would swoop over that.
Yeah, and you have to get through it before, but it was very, very cool. I've just written, giant mutant thing, Nathan killed it.
I did kill it, yeah. So this was the thing that they were using in the demonstration. They did the same at E3, where they would get to a point where the ghouls around you, just the regular undead.
They're undead, but they're not quite
violent unless you attack them.
Like Bloodborns. They look completely different, which I thought was really impressive.
They're kind of like the hollowed out people that you'd find
they look like hollow.
In Dark Souls. So if you went down to where was the flooded city? I can't remember, with all the ghosts, and it was absolutely horrible. In that opening area. So they're like those guys basically.
Just like you before you restored your humanity, to be quite honest.
Me specifically.
You specifically. It is a very long Gamescom.
And then they would so this guy, but they erupted. One of them erupted into, we spoke about this at E3, into a kind of a giant flailing dark oil monster. And it's obviously, they were speaking about how it represents something to do with why the world is destroyed like this. Yeah. So there's obviously some kind of, Bloodborne has the curse or the virus.
Yeah.
And the whole idea about viruses and blood. And this seems to be a kind of a similar, just a thing into the world, like this blackness. They let it kill them in the demonstration. It wasn't actually that.
Let them. He almost died a few times. If he had been on like unlimited Estus flasks, he would have.
But it was only 3 firebombs anyway.
You did 3 firebombs, and I think you threw one by accident. You were like, "Hang on a second."
Yeah, wait a minute, that actually killed me.
Mate, that thing's going down.
So I don't know what that thing is, It's going to tie into the kind of the central mythos in some way, and they are quite unpleasant. And their attacks are quite hard to read because they're kind of giant flailing beasts.
And the final one I have here is Dancer of the Frigid Valley.
We can't show you because I messed it up.
Oh my god, this boss is stunning. So think long limbs. It's very feminine but covered in armor with like a ghostly veil and this massive flaming sword. And the movements were actually quite slow.
Yeah.
Very much like this, but the movements I thought would be very, very fast.
Sort of like Vicar Amelia in Bloodborne, like kind of just because you're in a church. It looks like a church. With a kind of a cart
as
up
she's
the middle.
going around with this flaming sword, if it catches things like the wooden pulpit of the church, that whole thing goes up in flames.
So it does change them. Yeah, it changes the environment.
And the floor can catch fire as well. And again, you have to avoid that.
It was amazing, and I'm really sorry we can't show you.
It's a beautiful fight.
I simply didn't get there.
2/3 health as well. She produces a second sword, an ashen sword, and obviously because the whole thing revolves around Lord of Cinders. The ash is this is like a reoccurring theme throughout. Ashen swords, ash in your clothing, the way it comes off that dragon dinosaur.
Yeah, the dinosaur. Dinosaur souls.
Beautiful.
That could happen. Dino souls. I'm just saying.
Let's just stop.
The next one.
And there you go. That's I can't look at the extended demo that we saw today at Gamescom. I know Nathan's really looking forward to it. So loads of details. I guess if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below and we'll try and answer as many as we can. Otherwise, don't forget to stay tuned because there's loads more coming up from Gamescom.